When was the last time you were this hyped for a game of rugby? I am so excited about Ireland versus France in the Six Nations round 2. The teams are out. Let's have a reaction to the selection. That's what this video is all about. I'm Tim. This is Egg Chasers. You may notice I'm not in my usual studio setup. I've got my mobile setup because I'm in Geneva for a couple of days. Geneva is out that window. I've got my running gear on. Going to go out for a run down to the lake in a minute, but not before I've talked about the rugby. That is my commitment to the Six Nations, to this game in particular, and to making sure you have your fill of rugby chat on the channel. If you appreciate that, then please do hit subscribe. I was really chuffed to see a little earlier that went through 5,000 subscribers, and I've not been doing this very long, so I'm chuffed to bits with that. If I haven't earned your subscription already, I hope I will on this video, because I'm going to be looking at both teams, giving a reaction. I'd love your comments. And what I will be doing is taking both 15s for Ireland and France and putting them together into a combined 15 to see who I would pick if I had access to everyone, and your thoughts on that as well as we get into this. And Andy Farrell, one sigh of relief for Ireland, one big disappointment. The disappointment at hooker, where there's no Dan Sheehan. The sigh of relief at scrum half, where Conor Murray, who was an injury doubt, has been named. He's come through whatever issue he had. On the hooker front, Dan Sheehan was awesome last week. I absolutely love him. He adds a whole nother dimension to the way Ireland play. But I would say of the positions that Ireland have depth in, hooker is definitely one of them. Rob Herring and then Ronan Kelleher coming onto the bench, both class hookers. And I mean, we'll come on to France in a minute. They're missing their backup hooker. Ireland, even missing their frontline hooker, they've still got two really good ones in their matchday squad. So it would have been a much bigger issue, I think, if Conor Murray had been injured and they'd have been down to third and fourth choice scrum halves for this massive game. And just on the scale of this game, how big it is, this is a game between, for the first time ever, ranked number 1 in the world playing ranked number 2 in the world in the Six Nations. Could well be a Grand Slam decider, more than likely a championship decider, and ahead of the World Cup later this year in France. Psychologically, with both teams being on the same kind of the draw, same side of the draw, and could meet in a semi-final, I think it is, they could meet. This is massive. Psychologically, this is huge. Ireland's home form. France are unbeaten in 14 games. They've won 14 games in a row, so enormous game. Onto the side then, in the front row, Andrew Porter and Finlay Bealham continue at prop with, like I say, Rob Herring coming in at hooker. Tadhg Beirne and James Ryan continue with the back row staying the same. Peter O'Mahony, Josh van der Fleer and Caelan Doris. I did wonder whether they might go for Tadhg Beirne in the back row and bring Ian Henderson in just to kind of slightly beef up the size of that Irish pack. They've kept it as it is. And tactically, I think that might be to do with the fact that Italy had a lot of success by making France move, making those big guys move around a lot. And I think slowing France down when they have the ball and then trying to keep it really quick and make sure they look after their own ball when Ireland have the ball is going to be absolutely massive. So the pack, kind of as you were, except for hooker. And the back line, as you were. Conor Murray's come through, so Johnny Sexton. On the wings, James Lowe and Matt Hansen. Centre, Stuart McCloskey and Gary Ringrose, with Hugo Keenan at fullback. The bench, the changes are Ronan Kelleher coming in and Ross Byrne into the matchday squad for this one. So that is Ireland. Very settled feeling about Ireland, and you get that because when one player goes out, another one comes in. Finlay Bealham did great last week. Big test for him against France, however, because when you look at the French team, massive human beings, massive challenge that they're bringing to Dublin. And it is exactly the same for France. No change in the starting 15. So the front row of Cyril Bay, Julian Marchand and Uini Atonio. And I would say that there's been some question marks about Andrew Porter's scrummaging. Uini Atonio is going to give him a massive challenge. But what I would also say is there's some question marks around Cyril Bay. No doubt a class player. And when he's playing at his best, he's one of the best loose heads in the world. But has he been playing at his best? I would argue maybe not. Potentially in some of their front row positions, and you jump onto the bench, Barlow, the replacement hooker, they're missing Mal Vaca, and he adds a lot coming off the bench for France. So I'd say that, Ireland are going to miss Dan Sheehan. France are down to their fourth choice hooker coming off the bench. Julian Marchand is immense. and so it's a big advantage Dan Sheehan not being there. But the bench and Cyril Bay not quite playing at his best, there's a bit of balance there to be had, and it's not all about the Irish players that are out. France are missing quite a few players themselves. Julien Donty in the centre is still unavailable. Gabby Villiers, the winger. Cameron Wokey as well, second back row. So because there's no Wokey, you've got Flamont and Willems in the second row with Anthony Gallant, Charles Olivon and Gregory Aldrit, the back row. That's a very familiar, classy-looking back row, that, isn't it? The two back row matchups are just immense. And in Gregory Aldrit and Caelan Doris, this might be a battle for who is the best number 8 in the Northern Hemisphere, because you've got Ardie Surveyor in New Zealand, and I think you've got these two guys for Ireland and France. Classy operators, and that's one matchup of many matchups I cannot wait to see. Gregory Aldrit against Caelan Doris. Very similar guys, brilliant hands, great rugby brains, not the biggest number 8s, so athletic, real modern day forwards. And then in the back line, Antoine Dupont, Emile Untermack, that's his dad, what we're talking about. Untermack, Dumortier continues on the wing, Moafana and Fickou in the centres, Penaud and Ramos. The changes on the bench for France, you've got Quiou coming in at scrum half. I hope I said that right. I think I have. This is huge. I'm so excited about the game. When you look at a combined 15, this is usually where the comments get a little spicier. People get upset with some of the selections because this is where opinion comes into it. I'd love to know yours in the comments. Combined 15 then. And there you go. So I've gone for Andrew Porter over Cyril Bay for the reasons that I mentioned. Cyril Bay hasn't been at the heights that he has reached in the past, so I've just nudged Andrew Porter in. Marchand and Antonio, it probably would have been Tadhg Furlong had Tadhg Furlong been fit. I forgot to mention Tadhg Furlong again, obviously, in the front row discussion, but a massive miss still for Ireland. So maybe gives France an edge, and I think that's going to be the balance of power. The front 5 power that France bring against the speed that Ireland are able to play with and their attacking shape. And what was really noticeable for Ireland against Wales, and just generally recently, is how on the same page everybody is. These strike moves from scrums and lineouts, where just the timing, even with Stuart McCloskey coming in at 12, the timing of everyone is just so on the same page. And it's so slick at the minute. And that's what makes them so fun to watch. Ireland, the way they're playing the rugby with that diamond shape and the players out the back and the people running different angles. Love it. They're even able to cut good defences open from first phase scrum and line out, which really defences shouldn't allow teams to do. So into the second row, one of each. France and Ireland, Tadhg Beirne and Paul Willemse. And a back row, Charles Olivon I've nudged over to the blindside flank ahead of Peter Amani with Josh van der Fleer, and I've gone for Caelan Doris over Gregory Aldrit. Like I say, that is one that is it's close between the two of them, and I've got Doris just ahead at the minute, but we'll see come Saturday evening, won't we? Antoine Dupont obviously at the scrum half, Johnny Sexton at fly half, no surprises there. One player on the wing for each, James Lowe and Damien Penaud, class players, and I've nudged Fickou inside to inside centre, one of each, French and Irish in the centre with Hugo Keenan. I love Hugo Keenan, just does not make mistakes, so reliable, and Thomas Ramos made a few errors last week. I think those errors are going to be absolutely huge. Making the right decision about whether to just kick for territory or try and run it out, getting stuck in your own 22 and giving away a penalty, that's the kind of thing that Hugo Keenan doesn't do. And I absolutely think the scoreboard pressure applied through penalties, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, a real old school kind of rugby building of the score, I think that's going to be the difference in this game. And maybe a yellow or a red card could also be the difference. So just people having cool heads under pressure. But you can totally see 4 forwards from each nation and 3 French and 4 Irish backs. Potentially where France could have an edge. I've said their front 5 will be the biggest challenge that they pose to Ireland. But the impact they have off the bench, massive men. And maybe the depth of Ireland not having Tadhg Furlong and having Tom O'Toole on the bench as a result. maybe gives the front five energy that France can bring on, gives them another level potentially as well. And in guys like Makalou, I absolutely love that guy. But again, it's 5-3 in favour of France off the bench. So what was it, 8-7 in the starting lineup, making it 11-12 overall. So I think all I've done is confirm the fact that this is going to be a game for the ages. World number 1 v world number 2. Potentially a Grand Slam decider, even at this early stage in the tournament. Championship decider, certainly, and 2 incredible rugby teams in fantastic form. I wish I was in Dublin. The atmosphere is going to be absolutely mega. So, yeah, if you're as hyped as I am, get in the comments, get stuck in, and let's build up to one of the great games of rugby.